You've got Amanda Davila and Ashley Burton here, and we are talking all things bookkeeping today. Woo! Our favorite topic, right? Our favorite topic as business owners is bookkeeping.
Maybe not.
Maybe not, which is why we all need a bookkeeper.
Yes, correct.
Because talking about money and our businesses and the financial aspect can be either really exciting or like really stressful and miserable. So I brought on Ashley Burton today of Heart Logic Bookkeeping to answer all of your bookkeeping questions. So I have a list of questions that were asked from people who couldn't be live. So we'll be going through those, but please feel free to drop any questions in the comments, and I will be checking those and giving those to Ashley as well. So Ashley, to start, why don't you just give us a little background on yourself and how you came to be a bookkeeper?
Yeah, well, I had two dreams as a teenager, and that was to do hair and own my own salon and be an accountant. So I went with hair at first, and I've been a hairstylist for 15 years. I own my own salon, and the longevity just isn't there. So I decided to go to my other passion, you could say. And I feel more at home in bookkeeping than actual like tax accounting. And I feel like that helps. Being a small business owner helps you with that foundation and all those scary thoughts and feelings based around our money, so that you can really focus on your business.
I love it. Yeah, so I know we've talked about how I feel about bookkeeping.
Yes.
And numbers in general and math and all of that. So I am glad that I got myself on Quickbooks finally. So at least something's going on. You know, I'm still behind. So it's January. And I definitely need to go in and do some serious reconciliation.
Yes.
And I have, certain things I've done throughout the year to make it a little bit easier on myself. So like I have filters set up in my Gmail. So anytime something comes through from, like PayPal or any company I pay for business services, they automatically get tagged a certain way and into a folder. So at least when I'm going through now,
Yes.
I have a way that I can at least find the majority of my receipts and all of that. But I know there's a lot of really cool ways to use QuickBooks to set up automatic things and do all kinds of cool things. But what I find is like, it's not a good use of my time and energy because I freaking hate it. And it distracts me from doing my passion, right? So like you're passionate about accounting and, bookkeeping and all of this stuff. I'm not. So for me, it's like a huge pain point. And from the majority of business owners I talk to, they feel the same way as me. So I really think it's important, like, for people to know that they have access no matter where they're at in the world, no matter what their niche is, like no matter what they're doing, like there are people out there who understand and know and can help them. So like an example is I've had people who have local brick and mortar businesses, and they're just, kind of old school. Like they're not comfortable, like having some like person on the other side of the country that they've never met in person. Like they're like weird about like having like them doing their bookkeeping, which is totally fine. That's their style, right? So they should go to a person who's local. So that's totally fine for them. But for those of us who work online, like our whole business, our whole livelihood is all online. And what I found is those local old school bookkeepers don't necessarily know the details of online business and freelancers and how all of that works. Like it's kind of like when you're trying to teach your parent how to use a new piece of technology, right? Like it's like,
yes,
so
true.
From your the one client you have that did everything like by hand and like like so you've worked with both local and online, so you've seen that, you can see the big difference, right? Like that can be really hard and scary. So I think it's really important for people to know, like, there are options no matter what. So for me, I went and talked to a bookkeeper, a local one, and he didn't know anything about freelancers. So when I started my virtual assistant business, he knew nothing and he couldn't answer my questions. So I had to go out and find someone who could. And there's, our world is always expanding with everything going on online. Like I can, like my tax person is in Florida and she used to work for the IRS. Like, how cool is that? Like, I trust her because she worked at the IRS. Like,
knows her stuff.
Yeah. So that's, for me, that's important because I had a lot of big tax questions when it came to moving my business from Oregon to Hawaii. So, and all of these things with, estimated taxes and all this stuff, right? So I want people to know, like, you don't have to, if you can start your online business and you don't have to go to your grandma's bookkeeper, down the road who's, past retirement age and doesn't know, anything about online businesses or freelancers or any of that. So just know, like there are options. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on today live, Ashley, because you work with people online and know a lot of, because running your own business brick and mortar and running your own business online, both sides. So I think that you are a very valuable asset. And I'm really excited because we have lots of questions. So before I get to those questions, did you want to say anything else?
No, I mean, I think it's a perspective that I'm glad that I have, having both sides, and really having the online experience can be great for those brick and mortars, kind of the old school, because let's face it, everything's going online. More people that were working in brick and mortars are working online. So opening their eyes and letting them know all of the different programs and whatnot that they have access to is really great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point too. Like with, the pandemic and everything, so many previous brick and mortar businesses have had to pivot and move to online selling. So everything is like up in the air for them, and they have a lot of questions because they know what they know really well, but then everything going online, they have a ton of questions. And, instead of having, a book with everything written on their desk in the back of the store, like everything's online and they're getting payments from these different places like PayPal and Stripe and Square and all these different payment processors. And it can feel really scary and overwhelming. So I think that's an even like bigger benefit of having someone like you who has done both. And you still do both, right? Like
Yes.
You still have a brick and mortar business and you have an online business.
Yes,
so
correct.
You've gone through moving online, like, so you understand, you've been through it. So I think that's a really great way to connect with other people who have gone through it, because we all like to find a connection with somebody, right? And we like to work with people who have been there, done that, so I think that's really cool. Like I always like choose to hire people who have experience, like who've done it themselves, than just like learning from a book, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you go to the emergency room and there's two doctors and one, he hasn't given stitches yet, but he's read about it, like he understands the idea of it, right? He's maybe, sewn a pillowcase or something. Or there's a doctor who's actually put in stitches. Like
I'm gonna go with B.
Right. Like, which one do you want? So
yeah.
It's that same thing. Like it's really nice to work with people who have been there, done that. So all right, let me jump into some questions.
Okay.
Okay. So there's been a lot of questions about 1099s and who needs to send them, who should be receiving them, and what about if all of my payments are electronic? So I know this is the question I had for you, and it's come in several times, especially for independent contractors, like virtual assistants, OBM, social media managers, all of these people working as independent contractors online. There was that new thing that came out about the 1099 NEC, and there might be changes, and so there's been a lot of questions. So I guess if you want to maybe start with like what even a 1099 is and who it's for, just because there are a lot of people who are new to online business in this last year, so they might not really even know what that is. So
Yeah.
let's talk 1099s, all things 1099s.
All things 1099s. Okay, so if you are not a traditional employee that gets a paycheck, such as things Amanda mentioned, freelancers, independent contractors, a lot of us that work online, and even in the real world. So if you do not get a paycheck, if you are not an employee, you get a 1099. There's other things, so you can do a 1099 for someone you pay rent to. But the 1099 NEC is new this year, and it's very important for all of us because it is for services provided. So if you provided, or rather, we'll do it from the person that needs to file it. If you paid somebody for services in 2020, there's a good chance you might need to file a 1099 NEC with them and the IRS. And it's really great we're talking about it right now because it is due at the end of January. So that is very important. So gather all the information so you can get those filed. So a couple important things. It's for anybody making over $600 in the calendar year, specifically cash and check. So if you are super set up on QuickBooks and you use that for invoicing and everyone paid with a credit card, you don't need to do that. But if some people don't let go yet and are paying with a check, or if you are doing something more in person that give you cash, you will need to file that 1099 NEC. So that's really important. And then if you have QuickBooks, Stripe, PayPal, Square, nice things about those is they do their own 1099 and you do not have to file anything on your own. So that is really important. Oh, I think you're muted, Amanda.
Thank you.
You're back.
when I heard about the 1099 NEC and I saw the thing about if you've paid anyone over $600, I was like, oh my gosh, like I hired a lot of contractors in 2020 and paid a lot of people. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I have to do that? Like, which of course, is a big reason, like, I need to get like everything squared away with like having a bookkeeper to manage all of that for me because I don't have to stress about it. But yeah, I was like, oh, like I paid them all through PayPal or QuickBooks, or, I paid through those. So I was like, so that helps. So I don't have to do anything, right?
Right. And you can usually at this point go on those accounts and it will give you your year's totals and all of that. Usually you will get an email from those companies. So like with my hair business, I use a lot of Square. So I haven't gotten my email yet. I got an email that told me my totals for the year, some trends, those types of things. So here soon I will be getting the email saying that my 1099 is ready. And our lovely online world, usually you just go into your account and print it out and you're done, easy peasy.
Nice. Okay. Awesome.
Yes.
I love that. That makes it so much easier because I don't even feel like from like looking at it from being an independent contractor and doing services for people, I don't even feel like I ever got anything like that in the past. Or maybe I just didn't see it with all the millions of emails I get. But I know that I was able to log in. So when I was taking payments from clients last year, I guess I did take a couple through QuickBooks at the end of the year. But before that, I'd only done PayPal. So I just logged into my PayPal account and just found those numbers that I needed. So I was able, that was easy enough. So, okay. So is there, like, if I log into PayPal or QuickBooks, will it say like 1099 somewhere? Or is it just like, do you have to actually have like a form that says 1099? Or is it just the numbers that are important?
So you'll get an actual form. It's an actual tax form, 1099 NEC. There's a 1099 miscellaneous. So if you are one that does have a brick and mortar and you paid rent with cash or check, you will need to do a 1099 for that also. So there's a few different kinds of 1099s. off the top of my head, I think some investments and whatnot. So all of those are tax forms and should be turned in with your taxes when you file. So not that you did anything wrong by any means, but it just saves that trouble of going in, adding up the numbers, figuring that all out. Whether you just print the form or upload it to your QuickBooks or wherever you're preparing your taxes, and it's there.
Okay. So can you do your taxes directly in QuickBooks or from QuickBooks?
I know. You can do all your tax prep. You can upload your documents, have everything prepared to go to a tax accountant.
Oh, okay, cool. So I know, and this question is in here as well about estimated taxes, but I know when I log into my QuickBooks, it like has a little section that says like, this is your estimated tax for, I guess, that quarter or for the year, I don't know. So can we talk a little bit about estimated taxes since we're on that subject now?
Absolutely. First of all, do you have QuickBooks self-employed?
Yeah.
Okay, so self-employed, I would have to double check, but I think might be the only one that does estimated taxes. I don't think the other programs with QuickBooks do. Just a note to be made. So estimated taxes, some people confuse it with an actual tax payment. They are just estimates. So you pay them quarterly throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, when you actually file your taxes, sometimes you might be right on, sometimes you might be a little under, some over, you know, when everything kind of settles at the end of the year. So QuickBooks Self-Employed does your estimates based on your current numbers. If you have everything updated and whatnot, and that helps you to be the most accurate at the end of the year because, you know, things fluctuate. I think we all learned that in this last year. I'm sure we all had a quarter that looked maybe a lot different than another quarter. So your estimated taxes, if they're based off that. And then if you're working with a tax accountant, if you are one that have continued communication throughout the year, they'll do that same thing, go over, you know, your actual numbers and provide estimates quarterly. Or I'm sure a lot of us have worked with tax accountants. You pretty much only talk to them once a year when you file. And what they will do is determine those estimated taxes off the previous year. So again, if your years look similar, then you're pretty close. If it looks different, you might be a little off. But the purpose of paying your quarterlies is so one, you don't get behind, but you will get penalized if you do not when you do file your taxes.
When you say penalize, like what do you mean by that?
An actual penalty fee on your taxes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And I think that varies. I'd have to do some research and possibly talk to a tax accountant to see what that number actually looks like. I don't remember it being too scary, but you know, you don't want to pay unnecessary fees either.
Right. Okay, so that brought up another question for me. So can you explain a little bit about the difference between a bookkeeper and a tax accountant? Because a lot of us who don't understand the financial world, we just like all think it's one person, or we like don't really know who we should be asking questions to.
Definitely. It gets confusing because one person can be both of those things, but a lot of people are separate. So it depends on your needs and what you're interested in getting out of it. So some people love that one-stop shop. They want their bookkeeping, their tax, you know, filing, everything with that one person. Obviously, there's going to be a bigger price tag. Some people really like having a bookkeeper and a tax accountant separately because you have kind of a check system and have more than one person's eyes on your books. I mean, you should trust whoever you're working with, of course, but even little mistakes or, you know, errors, forgotten things, it's sometimes really great to have both of those eyes. So then when you separate them, a bookkeeper would do, you know, those monthly tasks, expenses, incomes, you know, work on your chart of accounts, invoicing, they can do payroll, kind of more those day-to-day, monthly types of things. Your tax accountant does the tax, like actual filing with the IRS. They know all the tax laws. So a bookkeeper wouldn't be a great person to ask tax laws. In fact, we're not allowed to answer those questions or give any tax advice. So that is a very, very important thing to remember. And that's good because I'm, you know, that's an ever-changing field to say the least, which is why it can be scary and confusing. But those questions, you definitely want to go more with your tax accountant. And that's your kind of in between for the IRS.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I know that even though like I hired the tax person, you know, to help me with the tax side of things, I still didn't quite understand like all the pieces, like, you know, like, but I know that it was really valuable for me. So like, like I do have like email access to her all year round, but I also can like purchase a block of time from her to just get on a Zoom call and talk face to face and ask all my questions. So I did that right after we moved to Hawaii because I was just overwhelmed with all of like the, you know, tax stuff, like questions about my EIN number and my LLC and like, you know, how it's going to look tax wise moving from one state to another and what the differences are. So I had a lot of questions. So my husband and I got on a Zoom call with her and sat down and asked all of our questions. Like we had an hour to like ask everything.
Awesome.
And then the things that she had to look, you know, research on, she sent a really nice follow-up email with, you know, not only the question, but a nice recap. So it was really nice to have that and know, like, even if you're a freelancer, you're not working with someone down the road from you, like you can still, just like we are, like be on face to face, like you're in person, right? And with the pandemic anyways, like a lot of people are even local people are doing this. Like your tax person or your bookkeeper who's down the street from you might not meet in person, so they might be on Zoom anyways. So I think it's really cool how the offline world has collided with us in the online world, and now they actually understand, like, oh, like these people like do like they're legit, like they
very legit.
People who aren't familiar with, you know, the online business world, they, you know, don't really understand. Even my own family doesn't understand how I make money online or like how I run a whole business online, or, you know, from anywhere in the world, like no matter where I go, like, or used to go, you know, they didn't understand, and they still don't. But I think it's coming around a little bit for a lot more people because your local even doctors are doing, you know, doctor visits over Zoom, you know, over a video call. So it's really neat. So anyways, okay, I'll try to stay on topic.
That's all right.
So we talked about the new 1099 NEC. We talked about estimated taxes. Is there anything you've seen for like online service providers specifically? Because, you know, a large part of my audience are online service providers. Is there anything unique to those of us working as independent contractors online that we should know about bookkeeping?
I think staying organized. I know, you know, brick and mortars, they deal with a lot more physical receipts and whatnot. And you can kind of, it's messy, but you can physically see all that. So I think one of the most important things is staying organized. Even the little things, like you said, having those emails go to the right places. So at this time of year, you can go click on there, it's all in one place. That's really important, but we're actually at an advantage because we do so much of our business online. Therefore, a lot of our documents, payments, all of those things are already online. We just have to get them to that place altogether to make it make sense at the end of the year.
Yeah. So what I started doing in 2020 was anytime anything, you know, a payment I made or a payment I received came into my email, my virtual assistant would then take that and put it into Quickbooks for me. And then if I got any in like my personal email, because, you know, some things I signed up, you know, to sign up for certain accounts that I pay, and it would come to my personal email. Then besides having that like auto thing to put it in the right folder, I would try to remember to forward it to my business email, and then was just like I would just type in QB, and then she would pull it when she's managing my email, and then she would put it in QuickBooks. So like for me, that's a system that worked really well. But so say, just trying to think like how to best utilize like the system I have, like QuickBooks. I know there's a lot of things. So is that something like if I was to hire you to be my bookkeeper, and I was like, okay, like I'm ready to like have you manage this for me. Like, what would that look like? Like how would we communicate that information? Like right now I have it in my email, my VA goes in and pulls it. how would I communicate that to you so you can make sure everything is in the right place?
So if the system worked for you, that same thing would work. You would just forward the emails to me. I would have a lot of questions, such as, do you have a separate business banking account? If so, I would link that with your QuickBooks account. And that's the best way, because once we set up your chart of accounts into all of your needs, we can automate a lot of those things, especially recurring things, even income, especially if you mentioned you did invoice a little bit with QuickBooks, that goes right in. So it actually, depending on where you're spending money and where your expenses are, it can make it a lot easier, a lot streamlined. With QuickBooks, there's a lot of integration. So we would talk about those and which programs you use. You mentioned PayPal, so you can integrate PayPal, and really it would make it so streamlined. So we would talk about all the details of those things, which obviously we won't do on this call. And really the whole point is to make it less work on you, more organized, and so you can go on anytime or be like, hey, Ashley, I need a report, and I send you a profit and loss so you can see, that snapshot of where you are right now and what adjustments might need to be made or what's going really well. And that can be a little bit smoother than, little things one at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, oh my gosh, like, I know when I first set up, so I set up my own QuickBooks. So I had a lot of like crazy time with it, trying to like understand it. And at one point I did have my business bank account linked to it. But then I think with that and me and my VA all inputting stuff and it pulling automatically, because like there were some things that like were hooked up to like my credit card, so they weren't pulling through from my bank account, so I had to put those in manually. Anyways, I ended up having a whole bunch of things like duplicated in there. Yes. And then it got really confusing. And that's the kind of stuff that makes me shut down. Like, as a visionary creative business owner who wants to focus on that stuff and like working with my clients and my students, I don't want to deal with that. So I can see a huge benefit to just having someone else manage that for me, and then just tell me if there's a problem or tell me if there's something I need, to deal with. So like, basically, like, just in this call, I'm like, okay, I 100% need a bookkeeper. Like, I've known it for a long time, but I was like, okay, like that would be so much easier, because it's something I stress about and then I shut down. And so now I'm terrified to look at my QuickBooks, because the only thing I know is that between me and my virtual assistant, we have put in lots of things throughout the year, but I don't know how, I don't know like what has been actually, like, I'm like, okay, so if I go in there and like type in my transactions Canva, because I pay them like $13 a month or whatever, so I'm like, okay, for me, reconciliation now, like backtracking, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that there's a payment in there for 12 months last year. You know what I mean? Like, yes. That's as far as like, okay, that's where my brain, I was like, okay, now I'm just playing cleanup. And I know, because I have a lot of business owner friends who do the same thing. It's like April 12th, and we're gonna all spend the next 3 days panicking, going through whether it's mountains of paperwork or mountains of emails or things we've like screenshotted or saved onto our desktop on our computer. Like, it's a freaking disaster. So having someone every month helping with that, to be like, hey, like, where's this? Like, I mean, is that like something like, so if I, like, when you're reconciling for somebody, like, if something's missing or something looks off, like, you're going to alert us, right? Like, hey, like.
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Yes. So, the bookkeeping professional, as you look at that, I mean, the nice things, this is what I love about numbers. They either add up or they don't. And that's the beautiful thing about reconciling. So if we went into one of your months and hit the reconcile button, there's a good chance that it wouldn't match up. It won't let you reconcile. You cannot go any farther. It's like, stop, do not go. And then of course we know the little tricks of what to look for and whatnot. And then of course there's some, communication. I might have some questions. And we've all been there, we've all done it, and we've all pushed it aside month after month until you get to now and you're like, okay, now I have a whole year and I have to go back to the beginning, versus just taking care of that, each month, clean everything up. also when we remember it and it's fresh in our mind. And that's the great thing about the bookkeeper, relationship, those months that you're like, okay, I had this, and this. Well, then the month I would reconcile for you. And if it didn't match, I could ask you, okay, what about this? What about that? And we would deal with it, short conversation, move on. So
and now, if you were like, so if you're going back through my whole 2020 and you're like, oh, in February, like, well, I'm not going to remember anything in February because I was selling my house and getting ready to move to Hawaii. And then the pandemic happened and like I was sick for half the month. And it's like, yeah, like I wouldn't have a clue. So it would be painful. So now that it's January 2021, I can really see a huge benefit of getting going right now, at least to start for this year fresh, right?
Yes. Well, that's a beautiful thing. You're like, okay, I don't want to feel like this again. So let's clean up last year. And then you can make those new habits now. And that's the other great thing a bookkeeper can do is set up your chart of accounts, automate, your regular payments, your, regular vendors. Like you would have Canva on there where you can go to vendors, go to Canva, see how much you spent there. Keep those things really, crisp and clean and really know where your money's at. Or where your expenses are at.
Yeah, because right now it's just like hot mess, express. Like I don't even know. And that's like as I'm like changing and pivoting and growing my business so much, like I need to really pay attention to those numbers. So I think that's one of the reasons too that I'm like really understanding the importance more than ever. And because I do hire contractors, and there's times where I'm like, was that like what I had them do, like did that actually like help me make money or not, so those are all things to help me like plan for my business moving forward. So that's super helpful. Okay, let's see, I'm just looking at this list of questions. The next one was best options for tracking payments and expenses for online business owners. I know we kind of already talked about that with QuickBooks. Are there other ways people can track that's like legit, or is like using a certain QuickBooks the best?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, QuickBooks is, let's face it, the most popular. It's the most developed. It has the most integrations. It's fairly easy to use or find a QuickBooks Pro advisor like myself. So that is the one you hear about the most, and I definitely support that. For people just starting out and maybe can't fit it in their budget, there is Wave, which is free. It is definitely not as developed. It has some glitches, but it can get you through. There's FreshBooks that's really growing. I have been looking into that, not super familiar, but same thing. So there is a wide variety. There's still people that use Excel sheets and spreadsheets, which if that works for you and you are organized and you have everything, that's okay. But again, back to the automations and whatnot, QuickBooks makes it so much easier and makes all those transactions come through and align, and then you can get those quick reports. So I definitely recommend QuickBooks.
Yeah, I used an Excel sheet when I first started my online business, and at the time it was okay because like I was doing one thing. I was a virtual assistant, so it was very simple. Like it didn't have expenses or anything. It was just people were paying me, so it was simple enough. But then I also, as much as I love spreadsheets, if it's not like set up for me, I get overwhelmed, like trying to figure out all of the like formulas and like how to make all of the, things in a column add up at the bottom, and, all of, a very simple one I can do, but I'm not an Excel or Google Sheet master. So it definitely gets overwhelming, especially once you start having a lot more like expenses and all of that too. I think that's coming from different places that overwhelmed me. So like I've used it and I know that it can work, but I really like, no one told me to like use QuickBooks when I started it. I just knew from like past experiences, like, okay, like that's like a really great option. And I knew, and I kept hearing like for self-employed, like it's great. So I finally did it, and I'm really glad I did, even though I'm not using it to the best of the capabilities right now. At least I know it's all in there, right? And it can be organized. So if someone like me is now like, okay, like it's almost tax time, everything's a mess, do you offer like cleanup services like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Cleanup services, trying to find any errors, catching you all up to the new year. That's definitely something I do.
So for anyone who is wanting to do that, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Like, how does that like process look?
Yeah, well, I have a contact me information form on my website. I think Amanda put it in the comments, and that just starts the conversation, getting to know you a little bit better. You can also message me or email me with any questions, and then we can get on a discovery call, see if we're a good match, and I can find out more about your business and see what might work for you.
Awesome. Okay, so that was one of the questions was, what if I haven't done any tracking for 2020?
Yes.
So you don't have to be alone. We don't have to suffer. There's absolutely options out there to help with that.
Yeah.
Help get that all cleaned up without being too painful for you. Let's see, we talked about estimated taxes. I'm just going back to these questions before we run out of time to make sure we get the questions answered.
Yes.
We talked about what a bookkeeper does, how it's beneficial for a small business. Okay, another question was, how much does it cost to hire a bookkeeper? So can you give like a general, I know it's gonna like depend on the business and a lot of things, but like what can like one expect to like pay a bookkeeper? Like just
yeah. Well, so there's different costs for cleanup and whatnot, but for regular monthly bookkeeping, it can start as low as like $97, and that is for a more simple business. And going up, it could get up to $200-300, and you would have to have that conversation about how many transactions you have, how many bank accounts you have, do you use PayPal, there's all the variables that go up from there. But I try to make it really reasonable. So for $97, but it could save you hours a month and all that stress. It could be worth it, just saying.
Oh, absolutely. And then the whole like end of the year, getting ready for taxes when you haven't managed everything throughout the year. Like literally, I was talking to a friend who owns an online business, and hers is pretty simple. Like she, receives payments through one-on-one clients and digital products that she sells, but every year she does the same thing, and she literally like stays up for like 3 days straight and just like tries to hammer out all of this, and it's miserable, right? Yeah. And then she's just all screwed up for the rest of her week because she still has clients, right? So and I think so many of us can relate to that, like that feeling. And then there's people who just like straight up ignore it all, and then like think of how many tax breaks you miss out on if you aren't correctly managing your expenses and stuff. Like you could be so like I feel like based on what I've heard from other business owners and research I've done, paying someone $97 a month is going to save you a lot of time and money and heartache and stress. But even like if that's what, like $1,200 a year, but if you're not managing it and it comes to tax time and you're like last minute stressing, just like trying to get it done so you don't get penalized, there's a good chance that $1,200 could have, well, first of all, it's a business expense, right?
Yes.
So it's a write-off. But like, think of how many like write-offs you might not even get because you didn't manage your books correctly.
Right.
So I feel like it can definitely pay for itself. Like
definitely. Yeah. With all those missed things, all those hours taken away from, working with your clients and building your business and new ideas and all of those things that really drive business owners that don't want to waste their time with this. So it pays, there. And what I find or see with a lot of business owners is they push out their taxes. So it's an option. It's always there. But what you're just delaying your anxiety, like no one wants that. Just deal with it, get it organized, move on. Obviously there's special circumstances.
Being someone who has filed an extension for my taxes in the past because of the craziness, I didn't know what to do. Yes, I absolutely understand that.
There's just nothing wrong with that, not knocking it. But if we can take those steps, spend a little bit of money and not extend that anxiety, we're all doing better.
Yes. Well, I think that's another good point, like that, like anxiety factor, because I know so many of us who aren't super familiar with like the financial world and how the taxes all work. Like we all, not, I'm not saying we all, but those of us that are in that like area, like we can feel that like fear, like,
Yes.
like, okay, like I'm pretty sure like if you don't file your taxes on time, they're not going to come like arrest you and throw you in jail.
No.
But like there's still that fear. And then also like just like the stigma of it, like, oh, like, am I a legit business owner? Like I don't have my crap together. Like like I think that's something that's important to talk about. And another reason it's important to find a bookkeeper you're comfortable with who's not going to make you feel like crap. I remember I worked at a place a long time ago, and the accountant was so mean. And I remember like seeing her just like berate the business owner over things. And I think a lot of us have seen that, whether we've seen it in person, we've heard about it, we've seen it in a movie, or you know what I mean, whatever. Like we have that fear, just like with anything else that's new or like scary to talk about. Like a lot of us, especially as women, have a hard time talking about money. I know I do. Like I hate talking about money. So we just have this fear, and it's like easier to just try to ignore it and like get like screw ourselves over, right? Like, okay, if I'm too afraid to talk to someone about my business finances and I just keep doing it by myself, like, yeah, I can do that. But is it going to be what's best for me and my business and my finances? Probably not. But what am I scared? Like, cause I thought about that. Like, okay, I need to hire a bookkeeper. But I think it's that fear of, well, not only like them seeing like my financial situation, right? Like how much I am paying in expenses for things. It's like, am I going to be embarrassed about it? Like, what are they going to find? I think it's for myself. It's like a fear thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Like I'm scared to really look at the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
But if we want to move our businesses forward and thrive and grow and make more money, like we need to know those numbers. We need to know where that's at. Yeah. You know, we can keep burying our head in the sand, but that's not going to help our business move forward. So I think it's important to find someone that you jive with and you feel comfortable with, and know like it has nothing to do with you. Like so Ashley, if you get into my QuickBooks right now and you're like, oh, that's a mess. Like, you know, you might feel that, but you're not going to make me feel like crap about it. Like, no. I'm not a bad person because I don't know how to manage my money. Like, I need to have a lot of lessons to learn, maybe. Yeah. But like, I'm not a bad person. Like, it doesn't affect me personally. It shouldn't, but I think it does. Like, we take, just like other, you know, empathic, like heart-centered business owners, like we take things personal. Our business is our livelihood, and like we put our whole heart into it. So I think it feels personal anytime, you know, even if it's like finances, like it feels like a personal thing. So I think it's just really, really, really important to stop burying our head in the sand about it, and get it straightened out and settled. And if someone wants to be a jerk and judge you about it, well, then they're not the right bookkeeper for you. They're not the right accountant for you, or tax person, or whatever, you know, whatever they are, whoever they are, they're not the right one for you. And with having the online world, like out here and, you know, at our fingertips, we can find somebody. You're going to find someone that you jive with. And my experiences talking with you about all of this, like, I don't ever feel judged. Like, I don't feel like you're going to berate me, or like you're going to think less of me. Like, it's a job, right? Like, to help someone figure out their finances. Like, we go to the doctor because we need help figuring out what's going on in our body and figuring out a plan to get it back on track, right? Or you go to the naturopath, you go to the acupuncturist, or whoever it is. You go to a chiropractor to align your bones and, you know, align your body to function correctly. So we don't feel like scared to do that, right?
Sometimes, but no, you're going to a professional for help. That's
right, right. It might be scary, like what they're gonna find, just like with the bookkeeping.
Yes,
but you're not afraid to go. Like, you're not afraid to go tell a doctor, like, my back keeps hurting when I do this move. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not afraid of like going and doing it. Yes, you might be afraid of the outcome or what has to happen, but like you go because you don't want to be in pain anymore physically. So I think it's the same with our bookkeeping, our finances. Like, we still need to go and talk to the professional and help figure out a plan. And I think when you think about it with that mindset, like, okay, this is what I've done. Like, it's not perfect. Like, it's kind of a mess, but I'm running and growing a business, and that's not where my time and attention's gone to. So I'm going to hand this over to you and say, this is what I have. Help me fix it. It's just like going to the doctor or taking your car in to get work done, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, our financials are pretty important, health, the way your car runs, your financials, they're all kind of there. They're all important. You can't ignore them. And the longer you ignore any of those things, the worse it gets. But, don't ever let anybody make you feel bad at all. There's plenty of bookkeepers and plenty of doctors and whatnot. You go find someone else. Because someone like me that is more like analytical minded than creative, even though I do hair, it's just the way my mind works. Like, I'm more like, let me get my hands on it. Let me fix it. Let me get all the numbers to match up. And more importantly, let me help you understand. So you're not in that place and it's not a negative, thought process and feeling every time you go there or think about that. I'm coming more from a place that I want to help you, learn, teach you, or just do it if you don't want to deal with it. Either one.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Okay. We have a few more minutes. And there's one more question on here that we haven't got to. It asks, how do I find a bookkeeper, and what kind of questions should I ask them?
Yes. Well, since a lot of us are online is a great place, in groups. Look for people that are helpful. Definitely look for people that don't make you feel bad. That's always going to be up there. Another great thing is referrals. We are all working on our online network and in person too, but online, a lot of us, and ask other people, who do they use? Who would they recommend? And I think that's always a big way to find those right people. And then once you get on the discovery call, you'll know if it's the right person for you or not. You'll get that feeling, and ask them what kind of services they provide, ask them, what their certifications are, ask them what they're comfortable with, ask them, of course, their fees and whatnot. Although usually we do have to gather quite a bit of information about your business before we can come up with the proposal. And then, like you said, again, you don't want to feel bad. So make sure you vibe right. I think that's almost just as important as someone that knows what they're doing. They need to know what they're doing. But if you get negative thoughts and feelings every time you talk to them, or you feel like, oh, great, what did I screw up now? Like, that's not the vibe you want at all. So, it's always important to work with those people that you click with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that so much. And something that I always teach my clients and students is about using like those gut feelings, right? Yes. And I've had so many amazingly smart business women that I know who have gone against those, not like in bookkeeping in particular, but like in anytime you're hiring anyone to help you, and they've gone against those gut feelings, and then they come to regret it. And I've done it. I've worked for clients that had a feeling like something was off, or like maybe I didn't right away, but then I started working with them and it started getting uncomfortable and bad, and I didn't cut it off quick enough, so we felt that pain, and that's a really important important thing not to feel. There's one other thing. When we were talking about outsourcing to a bookkeeper, I was thinking about what I teach in my course, Outsource Like a Boss, which teaches business owners how to outsource and how to find contractors for their businesses. And I was just thinking about the time, I'm sure there's a more technical term for it, but like basically like where you're spending your time and how that is affecting your income. So one of the examples I always use is, if you have to spend, however much time it is, 2 hours, even if it's 2 hours a month, right? Reconciling through your business expenses and payments and stuff, 2 hours a month, which for most of us, it probably, if we were doing all of it, probably would take more than that. So let's say 4 hours a month, say an hour a week. Okay. And that's fair. that's like small scale, but like, so say it's an hour a week. So you could be spending an hour a week doing all that junk or more, or you can pay a bookkeeper to do it and not have to deal with that. And what could you do with that hour a week? Right? Like,
a lot.
like, what could I do? Like in an hour. So if you, depending on how much you charge per hour, like as an online business owner, whatever you do. So like if you are a coach and you do like calls with people, you know, like I can't think of my word. I'm like losing my words. But, you know, if you get on like one-on-one strategy calls, right, with someone, and how much do you charge for that, right? So a coach might charge, I mean, who knows? It depends. But say you charge $100 for an hour, you know, consultation, strategy call, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, in that hour a week, you could be making $100. So in a month, you could be making $400 to $500, right? But if you can't do that, if you can't book in that call every week because you have to do your finances, then you're losing $400 or $500 a month. So you can pay a bookkeeper $100 a month to do all of that for you, or you can make $400 or $500, or you can just lose that $400 to $500.
Yeah.
So when you think about it,
time and money.
right? So, and I think that's a big part of the mindset that so many of us have to, like, unfortunately experience the hard way to like understand and like really see it that way. But that's one of the reasons I created Outsource Like a Boss, because I want business owners to realize like they don't have to spend 5 hours a week or plus, you know, sometimes going through their email and managing it. They can pay someone to do that for them. And in that time that they would be spending, they can make way more money. So it pays for itself and more. So absolutely, I see that 100%. I see that with, you know, outsourcing your bookkeeping as well. Plus, just like those of us who aren't analytical in the financial world and don't like looking at money stuff and don't like dealing with all those numbers and all of that, like we don't have the what's the energetic cost? Like, you know, how is that affecting our mindset all around? If we're constantly stressing about our financials, how is that affecting not only your business, but like you yourself? Like, how is that affecting your mental health, your emotional health, your overall everything, right? Because we know like financial stress can manifest into physical symptoms too. So again, when you look at it from that like cost benefit analysis side, like if I'm so stressed about my finances that I'm losing work because I can't do it because I'm too stressed and I'm just a mess. I'm not there mentally. I'm not there physically. I have to sleep 12 hours a day because I'm so stressed. Like, I'm not saying that's where I'm at right now, but like, you know, I'm just like, I've been there. Like I've had financial stress worry me so bad that it affects me physically. So I've been there. I know what it feels like. That's not going to help your business, and it's not going to help your business grow. You're probably going to start losing money. So forking out $100 a month for someone to do it for you, like 1000% worth it from my point of view. So I feel like anyone who's been in that situation or can at least like relate to that and have felt that like, like have to go in and, you know, reconcile all my, you know, financial stuff. And, you know, if you have to set aside a whole afternoon every month, like if you're not doing it weekly, which let's be real, most of us creative business owners are not going to do, or even non-creative business owners, like who has time, who makes the time, who makes it a priority? Not many of us. So if we have to set aside 5 hours at the end of every month to like go through and like be miserable, and then that's how we get into that, like that cycle of putting it off because we don't want to deal with it. And then it's January or April and it's time to do taxes and it's a whole year. And then we start filing extensions or we just ignore it and suffer. Like I've seen it happen so many times. So anyways, I know that I am blabbing on as usual, but I feel so passionate about this because I've been on the suffering end of it. And now that I've like seen the light and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a better way. There's an easier way. And it's not like crazy expensive. Like you can hire a bookkeeper to do all of that. And it's not like hiring a full-time employee there, you know, you're going to have to pay, you know, $2,000 a month to with benefits and stuff. Like it's not, you know, like finding an independent contractor, you know, bookkeeper is simple and amazing. And as your business grows, by keeping the financial stuff on track, you know, the cost might go up with the bookkeeper because they're doing a lot more, but your finances are on track and you're making more money. So it's just like a natural progression, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. So is there anything else you want to add before we end?
No, just put that fear aside. Not you, but not you specifically, everyone. Like, we don't need that anxiety in our lives. We don't need those wasted hours. Now is the perfect time. Reach out to me, reach out to somebody else, and take that stress off of your shoulders. Let's do better in 2021.
Yes. I'm here for it. Like, that's one of my big intentions is like not letting myself get behind, not letting myself feel stressed about it or feel bad about it. Like, just knowing, like, just like I said, like when you're going to the doctor, or you're going to the mechanic, or going anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just, this is where
Look at that bookkeeper.
No, and I don't have any intention to be, but I'm so glad that you are. And I'm so glad that there are amazing bookkeepers out there who, enjoy doing this. Like,
yes.
I don't get it, but I'm grateful for it. All right. Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of your amazing knowledge. And I will make sure that your information is linked everywhere so people can get in touch with you. And thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda.
Welcome.